Thank you. Wow. So please welcome back to the stage, Eunice Lau. And wow, so that's just the world premiere. This is the first time anyone really has seen it outside of the circles, the filmmaking circles, right?
Yes, and this is the first time I'm seeing it on the big screen, and I'm like, oh my god, this red focus.
It's
Seeing all my mistakes was painful.
Well, it looks great. Before we go into a conversation, do we have volunteers in each other room? Yes, they have the cards. I already see. If you have questions, put your hands up. They'll come to you and they'll write down your questions. And I know you have a lot of questions. We're excited to hear them. But while they're doing that, and when you get a bunch of questions, bring up here anytime. So to start off, Eunice, I know you're from Singapore. I know you're a documentarian, but put it in context for us. Uh, your career, where was it up to? Because this was shot in what, 2014?
I think the development started actually in 2011 or 12.
Holy moly.
Yeah.
But it was shot when? 2013, 2014?
So throughout the whole time from, like 2011.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so first put in context where you were at as a documentarian up to this project.
I had at that time I was at I already made two films back in Asia, Southeast Asia, and one was on the Cambodian genocide, and another one was about it's called I Love Malaya, which is about Singapore's untold story about how the Communist Party were the ones who really pushed the British to give us our independence, because communism wasn't sexy. So, and also because of various reasons, political reasons, that the history was sort of kept away from us, and we told that story. And then I was a journalist for about a decade before I decided, you know what, I think I would like to go back to school and learn filmmaking and be a better filmmaker and storyteller. And also working in both documentary and narrative space to tell our stories. So I was actually, this project came out of me meeting one of my actors who at NYU when I was doing my MFA. And she told me basically about her gang life, what she ran away from, and I was so intrigued by it. Really, mainly because I wanted to understand why she had to go to the streets to find love and acceptance, and her family, and why were these young men, young ladies drawn to that violence. And then it was behind all that was a story of a lot of bullying and a lot of trying to find a sense of self and belonging, and all of the stories that I could relate to, because it's the story of Singapore too. We were also an immigrant society. We were also trying to understand what it means being Singaporean, what it means being this hyphenated identity, multiple identities. So it resonated with me.
So this actress who you met in your MFA program was from Atlanta and was your gateway to this. She was telling you the stories and you were like, let's go down there?
Yeah, so I said, can you introduce me to your gang leader, which is Eugene?
Okay. Oh, okay.
So she called Eugene, and he basically said, well, she better not be from FBI. So, but he said yes to the interview. So Grace and I basically went down to Atlanta, and just me and the camera, and her, and so this was before I got found the money to bring in my crew. And when I say my crew, I mean my classmates.
So you were still getting your MFA when you were starting this project?
Yeah,
okay.
I was maybe in my second or third year. So we workshop, some of the ideas, and then I got a production grant from Spike Lee, who was my professor.
Sure.
Yeah, and he basically said that how he started with his first film was that his grandmother gave him the money. Okay. So he said basically we have to believe in our stories, and we have to invest in it. We have to be the ones who put down the first dollar. So, making this film, I'm sorry it's a bit scrappy, but it's really a lot of, you know, blood and tears and our own low, savings, working various jobs to do it. And I just want to, shout out to my friends here, my crew, who's part of my team who made this happen. And most of them actually worked on this, on no pay. So it's really how we managed to tell the story.
Okay, so you're you're introduced to it from afar. You're in New York. You're based in New York for a while. This actress classmate is telling you about it, and she's showing you what music videos, pictures, telling stories. Okay, and then you get down there and you meet them in person. You would talk to them beforehand and got the approval. When you actually get down there, what was your impression and how did it differ from what you like? Were you surprised? Like, what am I getting myself into? Or
Um, I mean, I have been a journalist for a while before this, right?
sure,
So I guess nothing really, like, I am surprised, but nothing surprised me, I'm there really more like eager to learn and to understand and to see a world I have not. And of course, they taught me a lot of things and, the lingo and what's OG. I didn't even know, like, words like that, cool words like that. So I had to learn it from them and,
yeah.
become a bit cooler.
Look, let's just aside real quick because that's one thing I was wondering. You'd kind of answered it, but at any time did you need an interpreter, or did you need to like, hey, stop, I need a glossary, or how did that happen? The process you just mentioned.
I mean, I just asked. I'm not shy about asking
Sure,
when
sure.
I don't know. But definitely when the dad was speaking Korean or like, the parents are speaking Korean,
Oh,
I
yeah,
needed,
of course.
and it was great that I had later on a producer who was Korean. So she did a lot of, the translation. But I didn't know at that time. But Vix's mom actually pulled her aside and said, "You better not screw up this up for my son, or I'll get you for it."
Yikes.
And it turned out that, and Grace was like, and so, and she's serious about that because actually her dad was a pretty well known gang leader in Busan. And Grace is from Busan.
Oh.
So, like, yeah.
And so when you're down there and shooting and all this is happening, I mean, you said nothing surprised you, but was there anything? And did you get in any situations where you felt it was a little iffy, or
Yeah, I mean, when I say nothing surprises me, I'm always constantly be surprised. But I open myself up to the surprises, is what I meant.
okay.
Sorry. And I think there were some times when, because we were so like caught up in just following, and you see some of the places we went to, were like, so one of my, you know, uh, Wu Jie, who was also one of the cinematographers, and we're sitting in Eugene's car, and we realized they're actually walking around with guns, and we have no
Whoa.
insurance because we're
Whoa.
scrappy. And this is actually not really that safe. That I think at that point when we didn't know whether it was going to, even Eugene didn't know what was going to happen. It could be a shootout. And we're like, oh my God, we actually put ourselves in some danger here. So, but I'm trained in like, hostile environment training and for journalism and stuff. But even that didn't really prepare me for like being stuck in the car behind and what do you do in situations like that. So I think after that night, I was a little bit more mindful about where we're going and how we can get out. What's Plan B?
How are we doing with audience questions? Because I want to ask a couple more, and then we'll go to there. But so yeah, there's a couple amazing moments in the film, and you mentioned guns. There's a scene where you see someone brandishing a gun. I mean, I guess they do that at Atlanta. I've heard Atlanta is quite a scary place, just the hip hop scene alone. You also get some amazing tearful scenes. You get a heated argument, which looks like it's about to blow. So maybe this is two questions. The first question is, how were you able to capture these moments? And all of us who are not documentary filmmakers, how did you structure the production in order to have a narrative evolve?
You know, um, uh, Good question because we filmed so much over the years,
Right.
and we actually did have a rough cut way back then, and I actually did most of the editing myself, and it was in a way that was kind of more linear. And then Yasu came on board the project. Yasu is not here unfortunately because he's away. Um, he was very instrumental in helping us sort of like you know take this story and make it bigger with like some of the, and he's a brilliant editor as you can see.
Sure.
Because the story has to make sense because it's so like there's so many elements to it. But at the heart of it, the core of it that I wanted to keep, intact, like, the mom story when that really moved us. And being in that moment, I wanted the audience to experience what we experienced behind the camera and being, staying authentic to the story. And, like I shared earlier in a panel today that two motivations I had. One was that, I wanted to dispel this myth that we as Asian Americans had it easy because that's kind of like the perception outside that we drive around in nice cars, we go to good schools, and, there's a white collar job waiting for us at the end of it. But that's not the narrative for most people.
The model minority.
Yes, and I wanted to dispel that myth, because it's like for me, that is a way that myth was a way to also for two reasons for me. I think it's just a way to not actually help the community. Like like why do we need to give handouts to Asians? They're doing well, but that's not the story. There's a few people who did well, yes, but again, that's also the motivation to show the struggle and the sacrifices their parents have to go through in order to put them through school. And those are the things that people don't talk about, and my mom had to work 2 3 jobs in order to you know to make me who I am today, and those are the kind of stories that matters to me, and I wanted to share that with the rest of the world, not just our community.
Maybe we can come back to this, but I think you hit on something that I found a salient theme in the film, and that is family. But let's go to audience question. What motivated the subjects to be interviewed? Did they think of it as publicity? Wasn't it a liability for them?
Sorry.
So, what do you think motivated the subjects to be interviewed? Did they think of it as publicity, maybe for their music or what have you? Because wasn't it a liability for them to do that?
Yeah, when they first started, so Harrison was Grace Kim's classmate, and when he agreed to talk to us, I think he was thinking more in terms of like promoting his music career, and we're like filmmakers from New York, but I think it came to a point where because then we became like I became part of his family, we became really good friends, and that sort of idea of fame was not there anymore because I stayed with him and I was always constantly there. And I think they really see me as like somebody who's trying to capture truth and honoring it. And so it evolved into something in which they themselves felt like they want their story to be told, And the dad and his parents were all very invested in it. Even his mom, embraced us. So it was they saw the reason why we were telling the story, and they embraced it. So it wasn't just for like initially it started off as like a commercial thing. I think for Eugene as well, I think he wanted us to understand the struggle or what he became. He always used to say to me that, I think my story can be made into a film. It's so, which is very fascinating, and a lot of elements of things that he told me I couldn't actually put it in the film because to protect him, we did actually have lawyers to go through and scrub through everything that couldn't come back. And in fact, when Viggs and Harrison were arrested in that big case, the prosecutor actually tried to use our film trailer to like indict them. That they admitted that they are in a gang, um, but I think his lawyers managed to sort of like strike that out.
Yeah, it's true that Eugene, when he's telling his background and how he became making so much money and all the kids are looking up to him, he obviously has charisma, and he certainly does seem like he could have a movie of his life story. Um, Were there any scenes you were disappointed you had to cut?
Yeah, I mean, we're very conscious about like not making. I mean, we have so many hours of tapes, and a lot of them, good scenes end up on the cutting room floor. And I think one of them was when Danny was telling us a story about um, how when he brought like kimbap to school, and people were like, "That stinks, yuck! What the hell are you eating?"
Oh,
And
okay.
so it was very like. Then I saw that scene in Fresh Off the Boat, so I was like, all right, they can tell that story."
Um, okay, let me see if I can get this question right. Was cultural appropriation of the African American experience a theme you wanted to explore with hip hop, gangster rap, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons why I sort of wanted to, share that part was because I wanted to show how part of the second generation, and they were talking about that their immigrant parents can really help them navigate American life. So it in a way they had to adopt a culture, and like they were constantly sort of like being sort of in this space where in this society where it seems like we have like a black and white, especially in the context of Atlanta, Georgia, very black and white neighborhoods, and where do we Asians fit in that narrative? So they were kind of in a way, made to choose sides, and some would choose to live in Gwinnett, which is a very white neighborhood, and try and get your A's and go to college, and that in some ways, or you choose to sort of adopt, the language and the culture, and that was what my main characters were gravitating towards, and I think it was mainly because they also see themselves just like as descendants of the oppressed and the colonized, and so they really identify with the black culture and the music. So it wasn't so much appropriating as in like them trying to like define something tangible to define what it means to be American.
Sure, sure.
Because like Vix, he speaks Korean to his parents, but it's broken Korean. So that's not his first language.
Right.
So he is just trying to create a sense of that unique identity that is like between his Korean roots and who he wants, which was like raised in Atlanta, and this is what he knows, and this is his crew and his friends. So I don't see it as them being, you know, um, stealing. I think they really see themselves as that and expressing it that way because this is who they are.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's part of the point of the film is that they're living the life, right? Okay, the women, the mothers, girlfriends, daughters in this film were very memorable and remarkable. What were some of your hopes or objectives in including their voices and images in this documentary?
The mom.
It says the women, including the mothers, the girlfriends,
Oh
the
yeah.
daughters,
Yeah, yeah.
also all the pivotal women
Yes, yes.
in this film are very memorable and remarkable. What were some of your hopes or objectives, excuse me, in including their voices and images in the doc?
Well, it's so important. I mean, they're the mothers of these young men, and looking at things from their point of view and their girlfriends, and just also really it's also their quiet suffering, right? Of what they have to go through to put up with um, the young men and navigating their identity and going through their journey, and yeah, they're not doing this without causing a lot of pain to people around them, and that is the truth, and like what Joanne said, he's an asshole, no doubt, but I love him,
Right.
And he's trying his best, and I do see that. So, and we're not gonna make them like heroes and put them on the pedestal. This is their point of view. I felt was really important as well.
I found the same dichotomy when he's talking about his love of religion and God, and yet he's talking about being in jail. So it's really there's a very interesting moral compass or lack thereof going throughout the narrative. I think we have time for a couple more questions, and the first one is kind of a sort of a two-part question. You spent a lot of time with the protagonist. They smoked a lot of weed. Were you offered any?
Oh yeah, all the time, drinks, everything. But I basically would tell them, sorry, I'm on duty. I don't smoke while I'm on duty. But actually, I just don't smoke.
Right.
But we were sometimes inhaling. Tell me I'm wrong, Ryan.
Secondhand smoke.
Yeah, that I think that it does hit in a little bit too. It gives me a headache. But yeah.
Yeah, and okay, so the second part here is what was, I mean, sort of broach this a little bit, but I'd like to hear what you have to say. What was the most shocking thing you encountered?
Shocking.
Shocking. I know you're kind of immune to shock, but that's the question.
Shocking thing. I think when I mean it's some of the things, a lot of things were very shocking, to be honest. Like, I mean, learning from Eugene what happened to him. His parents just left town, abandoned him with like $600, and he couldn't find them just because they didn't know how to deal with him being violent towards his brothers. And I think that's a horrible way to, like, I mean, in a way, what that set him off on that path, right? So in a way, I felt sorry for him, but I was shocked that actually sometimes the parents, like, they're so driven to the extent that they don't know what to do, that they would just like do that to their kid. um, and then I think the other thing that shocked me was when we found out that day, that when Vix told us about his son,
Yeah.
unborn son,
Yes.
and we didn't know before we arrived and stuff, and so the story just kind of came out organically. And yeah, it was quite painful to witness that, because by then, he's like a brother to me, and to know that they were going through that pain was terrible.
Yeah, and when as a viewer, and this is the second time I saw the film, and that scene sort of sideswipes you out of nowhere. So yeah, I think this is going to be our last. Well, it's also a two-part question. It looks like. Did you come out with the same story you went in with?
Yeah. You never do. When you make films,
Okay.
I mean, that's the great thing about documentaries. You go in with a certain idea, and you never know what you can, uncover and discover. And that's the beauty of it. And you just go on this journey, and be open to it. And so we, like, also one of the reason why we took such a long time this film was because we were waiting for it to conclude. And we were waiting for them to, in some ways, to come to a point in their life's journey, coming out of prison, to be able to know, like, okay, I think we're ready to end the story. And even though their story has not ended, but for us, at some point, the narrative ending it here when they're out of prison just felt right. So that's why it took us like more than 10 years.
I feel like we're really just scratching the surface, and I'd love to ask you a lot more questions, but that's all we really have time for. But I want everyone to look out for what you're doing next. Great filmmaking, great film, great story. Thank you so much, Eunice.
Well, thank you.